Hey guys, Mr. Kyle Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. So today, I want to talk about some SAT stuff. At the time of me doing this video, it is almost time to take the first SAT in what seems like forever. It's coming up this Saturday, August. Let's see, what's today? Oh my God, I can't get my day straight still with all this COVID-19 stuff. Today's Tuesday, so it's what, the 29th? So on the 29th, we have our SAT, the first one in a long time. And so I've been working on a little mini course. And what I wanted to do today, since I'm not going to be done with the mini course in time, since I want to proof it and have people look over it and things like that, I wanted to share basically what the entire course is about and share some of the nuggets with you now. And that way, anyone that sees this before this test or to prepare for an upcoming SAT, if you see this video later or much later down the road after I've released this, you can still get some good tips, tricks, and tools to help you to understand how to maybe kind of hack into the system and figure out how to score a higher score without doing that much more content work. It's important to do content work. It's important to know all the different topics that are on the SAT. Don't get me wrong. But there's also a couple other things, and I'm going to share them with you now, that are sort of just some tools and tips and all that kind of stuff to help you to kind of boost your SAT score quickly. And that's kind of the subtitle of the course that I'm going to come out with very soon. So let's go ahead and dive into the first thing that is in my course, which is calculator tools. And basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. So for the calculator section, there's three really big things that you can do on that section. There's one, you can turn fractions into decimals, and of course decimals into fractions. And that's really important because a lot of times you can do the work in the calculator, but the answers are all in fractions, and you need to check it, so you can just change all the fractions to decimals and then compare it that way. You can also just, if you have a lot of fractions, change them to decimals and solve them, just change them over. And you can do it really easily and really quickly with that little tool. You just press math and you go on, it's the first option. It says decimal to fraction. And of course you can do it vice versa. Number two thing on the calculator is that you can actually solve any equation you want for X without having to do any of the work. So what you do is you take the left side of the equation and make that a graph, and then take the right side of the equation, make that a graph, find out where those graphs touch, and that is the solution or solutions to your graph. You can solve using that method even if you have x squared or x cubed or any power of x. And then the third, and the thing that I probably spent the most time on doing out of this whole mini course, is programs. I actually built a bunch of programs, and I have the steps to make all of these programs in the course. But basically, I learned it all from YouTube. I just looked up some YouTube videos on how to make the the programs myself, and just kind of build them from scratch. You can download some programs for free off of the interwebs. You can just kind of search for them, and it's on a couple different websites. Just be careful, downloading anything off the internet, of course. So do that at your own discretion. But I also was a little bit like, I don't want to download anything if I don't have to. So I built my own programs, and they're embedded in the course. So that's everything with the calculator section. Now, the other four sections are marking the text, multiple choice, skipping problems, and then the last one was geometry tricks. Okay, and I don't know if they're exactly in that order in the course, but it doesn't really matter too much, because I'm giving them all to you right now. So as far as marking the text, it's really important because when you mark the text on really hard word problems, especially long ones, it helps to cut out the fluff and really get to the point of what they want and how to get them what they want. And you do this by, number one, you circle the numbers and letters, variables. Two, underline the context of those circled numbers and variables. And then three, highlight what they want, what the question is asking for. Or you can box it if you don't have a highlighter, but I would highly recommend it. And if you get a highlighter, highly recommend yellow. It's statistically the best color. It's also the most popular color because it's the best color, I think. Anyways, but it's statistically more helpful to use yellow. So that's the tips, and of course I go way more into detail on the course, but multiple choice tricks is the next thing. The tricks you can do with multiple choice are actually many, but I think part of this one is a little bit twofold. It's sort of like I'm talking about things you should do that are multiple choice tricks, and then also things that you shouldn't do that are kind of just things that are some misinformation that's out there. So for instance, a lot of people say, oh, when in doubt, choose B or choose C. I heard choose C growing up, but it's actually not that much statistically more often. Might be a little bit. One study showed that for mostly paper tests, it was 28% more likely that B was the correct answer. But that's for paper tests. We're talking about the SAT here. It's like a lot of computer generation. So it's going to be very closer to, very closer, very close to 25% for each of them. Maybe a little bit higher for one of the options than another, but not enough for it to matter, right? So that's a disclaimer, common disclaimer. Another little nugget within the multiple choice tricks is if you're looking to see if all of the above is the correct answer, you only need to check 2 of the 3 previous answers. If A and B are right, and there's a choice D that says all of the above, then it's all of the above, right? As long as you know for sure that it's, A and B. And then, of course, if there is no all of the above, and A and B are both the same exact thing, then you know that A and B cannot both be right, which means that neither of them are right if they are saying exactly the same thing. Right, so a couple other nuggets like that, but those are some of the nuggets within the multiple choice tricks that we talk about. Moving on to skipping problems. So skipping problems is super helpful. Basically, in that section of my mini course, I talk about why you should do it, when to do it, and on what kinds of problems to do it. Obviously, if you aren't sure how to solve the problem, skip it. Also, analysis problems, like heavy analysis problems, statistics problems, unless you're just really good at statistics and you're able to just get through it really quickly, if it doesn't seem like it's much of a strain, usually some of the heavy analysis problems can just take up a lot of brain function. You don't want to spend too early on in that section. And then, of course, problems with more than 3 lines of text, because it just takes a lot of reading, so you have to, comprehend more things. So those sorts of things you want to skip, and it's really good to skip problems because when you skip a problem, your brain is still solving it in the background, in the subconscious. They actually did some studies on that one as well. So that's pretty cool. And then for the geometry tricks, basically there's 2 kinds of tricks for this. And I actually made a video on geometry tricks not that long ago, a couple weeks ago. And I'll put a link for that one. I'm going to have a bunch of links in the description of this video, by the way, because a lot of these things I've talked about before. So for instance, with calculator tricks, I've talked a lot about non-calculator tricks in the past. Like multiplication and division tricks, ways to multiply and divide numbers, fairly large numbers, fairly easily without having to write them all out, right? Like 23 times 5, okay, 5 times 3 is 15, 5, carry the 1, blah, blah, you know what I mean? So without having to do a lot of that, you don't want to try to do a lot of that because it just bogs you down. You want to be as the least amount bogged down as possible, if that makes sense. All right, but anyways, the last thing is the geometry tricks portion that I talk about in my mini course. And basically it comes down to 2 things. You can measure sides and you can measure angles. Okay, so, and of course with a lot of these things, if you don't feel comfortable doing these, then you don't have to. It's up to you, but they're completely legal to do and use on the test. And I say that because, I don't want to hurt your conscience doing this. So if you don't feel comfortable with it, then don't do it. It's up to you if you want to do this or not. But it's completely okay, and people have done this before, and the test administrators are okay with this method. Basically, you measure the angles and the sides. And the reason why people are okay with this method is because unless you are very, very careful, you're likely to just get an estimate of what the answer is. And so you can narrow it down to maybe 2 options. Either 3 or 2. Usually 2 options is what you can narrow it down to by doing one of these methods. So it's not foolproof, but if you're very careful and there's not another answer close to your estimate, then you can be very sure, if you're very careful, that it is that answer just by measuring it. And here's what you do. With angles, You basically crease your paper in half, and then boom, you have a 45-degree angle. For sides, you just take your scratch paper and just mark a known side that they give you in the problem, and then put it next to the side that you're looking for and kind of estimate how long that side is. And the cool thing is that side length that you just created, if you crease that in half, now you've got half of that given length. So if you have a given length of 4, crease that in half, you've got 2. Crease it in half, you've got 1. There you go. You've got a little makeshift ruler for that problem. Okay, so really cool things you can do with geometry there. So that's basically everything in a nutshell that I've got in my SAT mini course that I'm coming out with. And like I said, I'm pretty much done with it, but I want to brush it up, make it better, share it with some of my current students and see what they think and see what improvements can be made before I release it to you guys. So stay tuned for that. It's getting very close to the end of the completion. Speaking of the end of the completion, which doesn't make any grammatical sense, that brings us to the end of this video. So as always, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And if you haven't grabbed my free guide, The 5 Math Mistakes Everyone Makes and How to Avoid Them, it's on my website, myersmathematics.com. And I hope to see you very soon in another episode.